Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prizepicks.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 337, presented by Prizepicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And let me tell you something, doing pretty well on this hockey championship. Not doing too bad with the Oilers and the Panthers, I'll tell you. I'll give you some tips, some tricks later in this episode. I'm Evan Marinofski. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. I'm happy you're back. How was the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon? Give us the lowdown.
It was unbelievable. Of course, going out there, felt like I was in the set of the Goonies for a couple of days. Thankfully, nothing happened on the Bruins side of things. That while I'm out there in the wilderness, what do we even have to talk about today, Evan? Really not all that much, I want to say. Nothing. But it was great. Weather was awesome, 60, 70 degrees. Unlike here in Boston, it didn't rain and do a monsoon every Saturday or anything like that. So it was great. Good to get out in the wilderness a little bit, decompress, unwind, unplug for a little bit. And again, timing was great because nothing happened with the Bruins. So we gotta have a blank slate today, all right? We're just kind of shooting the shit.
We'll give our your favorite spots in Oregon to check out, and in Washington we can run through those. Marco Sturm introduced as the next head coach of the Bruins. Obviously, that was on Tuesday. Now, 14th floor. I gotta say, I'd never been in that Verizon building. Hell of a floor, I'd never been there. It's a whole shrine to the Bruins, basically. The irony was, it was a very foggy, rainy, cloudy day, and it was right behind their presser. I know, right? Never happens in Boston. We've turned into Seattle. But kind of foreshadowing a little sort of what's on the horizon for them, which is uncertainty. It's weird. They're in a weird spot. And, as I was listening to Marco Sturm, who sounded good, who sounded like a head coach, who said all the right things, charming, interesting, open, all I could think of was this roster has so many question marks that, I feel better about Sturm after Tuesday, but it's kind of almost impossible to feel incredibly great. And it's not his fault. Although there are a lot of people who are like, well, what's he done? He's a Bruins guy, blah, blah, blah. Even though he's coached a lot of places, he's done a lot of things. I have no problem with that. It's more so the roster. This roster, there's so many things up in the air. There's so many question marks that it's sort of we'll wait and see.
Yeah, I think there's only so much you can really glean from an introductory press conference for a head coach, especially for a team, as you said, that has so much up in the air, right? And again, to your point, I listened in. I was over in Olympic National Park while Sturm's press conference was going on. Still had Wi-Fi, so he still was able to tune in. Yes. But yeah, I agree with kind of what you said. He said all the right things, sounded like a head coach, kind of preached the principles that we'll dive into a little bit, right, of getting back to a defensive identity, working, evolving offensively, getting back to that culture, that intensity, kind of the stuff you want to hear. A lot about player development, which I think is going to be a key part for this team moving forward. So checked off all the boxes, said what you wanted to hear, right? It wasn't like he went up there and was just like, oh yeah, we're gonna run it back next year. We're all good. No, the Bruins.
No more additions to the roster. Just keep it rolling, guys.
Yeah, or it wasn't looking at. Well, I think the Bruins have had a good development path. He easily could have told.
John Sweeney nailed the 2015 draft.
Yeah, he easily could have toed the company line, right, of looking at guys from over almost a decade ago, right, of McAvoy or David Pastrnak or Jeremy Swayman or some of these other guys. They easily could have, mapped out or kind of toed or echoed maybe the same message that the Bruins management had 2 months ago during that disastrous press conference. And it wasn't. It was very much, I think, for him looking at what went wrong for this team. That's something that even Don Sweeney mentioned, that they had 14 interviews for head coaching candidates. And, as much as people look at those interviews as a way to kind of have these coaches map out their vision, map out their strengths and weaknesses for a team, and also I think gives teams the opportunity to hear from an outside voice to kind of get an audit of their organization. It feels like they kind of face some tough truths of what went wrong, what has been the flaws of this team, and I think Sturm kind of hit on those things. So I think, it was impressive to see what he kind of mapped out, what his expectations are for this team. But he also kind of cautioned it, and to your point, there's only so much you can really take away from these press conferences when you still have the entire offseason. You still, Sturm can talk about what his vision is for a team, but he also prefaced it by saying, like, this is not going to be done overnight. It's not going to be, middle of September, our team is rolling and firing on all cylinders. No, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be, how this team upgrades his roster during the offseason, whether it's, through the draft, free agency, trades. And then once you kind of have an idea of what this roster is and what I think we are setting expectations for this team moving forward, then it falls on Marco Sturm to be like, here's what we have. What can we draw from? What can we focus on? What can we emphasize to really get more out of this team, considering where they were just a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, even when he was talking about, we'll dive into this a bit here now, like offensively, evolving and playing with more pace and creating offense, it was very much like, well, it starts, but it's not going to be built in a day. It's not going to happen overnight. And I think, like all of us, I think he watched the Bruins last year and watched film and said, oh boy, they are far away from putting up a lot of goals for. And I go back to sort of what we said in the wake of the hiring, which is like, I don't think they're going to be a high scoring team next year. I don't think that's going to be their MO. I don't think that's even going to be their plan, but you still have to score. And that also goes hand in hand with developing a lot of these young guys, which you hit on a lot of player development. You look at guys obviously on the roster, like a Patra, like a Mitten, like a Lysell. Don't forget about Georgi Merkulov. So guys that are younger who are going to have to be integrated in and fit. And, fortunately for Sturm and fortunately for the Bruins, like Sturm has been in the AHL the last couple of years as a head coach working in player development like that. He was an assistant with the Kings before that and aided in kind of getting guys into the lineup up in LA. So I think that is a good thing that he brings. It just comes down to like, what are their expectations? Sweeney kept mentioning like, well, it's an open canvas of kind of what they do, which is good and bad because it's like, well, what do you want me to do here? I just sort of wonder like, how lenient are they? Because if you remember, like the Jim Montgomery press conference, the popular thing was younger players need to be brought in more and bringing them up and this and that, but it was very much a win now mentality. I don't think they're a true win now team, but you do need to win, as we always say. And Sturm is a first-time NHL head coach. Don't want to lose this opportunity. I am curious just how much those younger guys get in and get opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Bruins are in an interesting spot because I think it's easy just to look at the state of this team, especially coming off of that trade deadline sell-off, to be like, all right, this team is, take your pick, right? Retool, rebuilding. It's going to take a couple of years. And I think if that is the plan, I think you can, map out a 2-year kind of build back, right? Where maybe you're taking a step forward this current season. Some guys right the ship. You're giving more leeway to guys like Fraser Mitten or Matt Patra or Murat Husendinov or what have you. And you're taking a step in the right direction. That's kind of what we've talked about, right? Of what we imagine the best case scenario for this team probably is, you're in the mix for a playoff spot. Maybe you sneak in as a wild card team. You play in the first round. You have a good, matchup against probably a higher seeded team. You have a good fight. You'll take it if you win. But even if it's a 6-7 game series, but younger guys are getting their feet wet, it feels like the team, especially going into next year when, again, you have even more cap space. Younger guys are more proven. It feels like you're ready to take a big step forward that year. I think you can sell Bruins fans on that. It feels like that's the right option, but they are in this interesting spot, Evan, where, and it's even something that Don Sweeney mentioned where he was asked about the number 7 overall pick and kind of didn't, take out of the equation the fact that they could just trade that number 7 pick, right? It's not set in stone. And
the podcast topic ears went.
And even he also not even mentioned that. He mentioned the fact that they just have like a haul of draft picks. You look at their first next year, which could be, maybe a top 15 pick. You've got Toronto's first rounder. You got, the Florida 2027 first rounder. Like you've got a lot of options and you got a lot of ways you can really improve this roster. And I'm sure for the Bruins, it's kind of towing that line of like, listen, the bill has come due. We need to replenish our prospect pipeline. And I think we have the opportunity here to kind of take it slow and steady and build things back up. And I think that's a good way to do things, but it's probably really tempting. It's like that that meme of Kermit when he's got the black hood on. And it's like you have all these picks, and all of a sudden you see like, Marty Necas is out there, or Jason Robertson, or one of these guys. And I'm sure it's really tempting where you look at, it's not like David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy are 25 and 24, right? Like you've also have this stretch here where, maybe you can sell it off of a 2-year retool rebuild, and all of a sudden David Pasternak's 30, 31, and you've got 2 or 3 younger players that look like they're going to be key cogs moving forward, and you're ready to contend right away, and that's a successful retool. But what if it goes longer than that? What if all of a sudden one of these guys, your number 7 pick, isn't even like a top 6 lock? He's more of a middle 6 player that can help you out, but he's not part of that winning equation, right? I think then you run into this issue of, all right, is whoever we get at number 7, whether that's, Desnoyers or Frundell maybe, or Jake O'Brien, Roger McQueen, are any one of those guys better than Marty Necas, who's, mid-20s and would help you out right away, right? But then you can also map out like, all right, but is one of those players still addressing your most pressing need, which is, a franchise player down the middle? If Elias Pettersson's up for grabs, maybe that changes things, but there's a lot of risk involved with that. And also it remains to be seen if Vancouver's even moving him. So it's a very convoluted way, I know, of saying that as much as it looks like the Bruins could easily just kind of, kick the can and spend 2 years kind of retooling, it's going to be very tempting for the Bruins when you look at just their core players of being like, all right, what if this goes for 3+ years and all of a sudden David Pasternak's 32, 33, right? You do have to weigh that as well.
What do we always say? Don't waste David Pasternak's prime. And they feel it. They absolutely feel it. I mean, I think that's why they would consider, and Sweeney kind of alluded to that on Tuesday, of like, they will consider moving that pick. And, we always talk about like, and Sweeney's done this in the past, trading first-round picks for guys you would essentially hope to get with that first-round pick. Like a Hampus Lindholm, that was a great example of like, you trade a first-round pick for a guy you hope you draft in the first round, and sort of a franchise building block. Necas is a great one. Robertson's a great one. And I think it's an interesting thing because, like, as you said, there's no guarantee these picks pan out. These are lottery tickets. I mean, 7 is a high lottery ticket. It's a high percentage. I don't know my lottery tickets, but the ones that say that are like $50,
yes,
and are like $1 million is like written all over them. I guess like a number 7 overall pick's kind of like that. But I agree. I could absolutely see them doing it, especially as you said, because they have a bunch down the line. This isn't like, hey, we just have this. And I think it was even NATO was talking to Dupes in a story, and NATO mentioned, even if we trade this first, the number 7 pick, we still have, 2 seconds. And that's really exciting for us because remember, this is a scout. As much as you guys trash the Bruins scouting staff, this is a staff that has been like kind of, what's the word? Like depraved every year of actually making high picks. It never happens. So when it finally does, it's like, oh my God, that's like a gift on Christmas. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what they do there. Anything else from Sturm that caught your attention, that caught your ear, that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, I would probably, there wasn't really a lot that I didn't like, right? And again, it's only so much you can, I'm not saying like all sunshine and rainbows, right? But I also just think there's only so much you can take away that's really concrete from these things. I think for an introductory press conference, especially for a team like the Bruins that have a lot up in the air, are going to be really busy this offseason. We don't know what their full roster is going to be, or even what the reasonable expectations are for this team next year. We think it's going to be kind of slow and steady, right the ship, that kind of season. But you also could have a situation where all of a sudden maybe they trade for Elias Pettersson or something like that. Or, all of a sudden these younger players they have take a huge step forward or something, and Jeremy Swayman regains his form, and all of a sudden they're second in the Atlantic and not a wild card team. Or maybe they bottom out again. Like, there's still, I think, not a lot set in stone. So there's only so much we can really glean from what Sturm says right now before we get into training camp to see what the personnel is, what Sturm's trying to do with the roster that's been handed to him. I think there's only so much you can go from there. I think the only thing I would also say that I liked was the focus on intensity in practices. I think it's one thing that we knew it was going to be a talking point for any coach of like the Bruins culture and like, Bergeron and Chara, and we got to keep that still in place. Like McAvoy and Pastrnak are still. We knew that was going to be the thing, but I think, again, the point of looking at something concrete they can look at, I think Sturm mentioning that like practices at, shitty Rastusha back in the day where Chara was leading it and they were so intense and that was setting the standard. I think that's something that is going to be key for this team, where in terms of you look at where things kind of started going off the rails last year during training camp. You're like, what exactly is going on here? It feels like there wasn't a lot of pace to training camp. There wasn't a lot of cohesion. A lot of the drills, you're like, all right, I count like 2 plays there that felt like they were, pulled off the right way or something that the coach's staff was happy with. It just felt really disjointed. Not a lot of, chemistry. Scheduling was weird, and it feels like that kind of bled into what was a really dysfunctional year. So if the Bruins can look at that, especially with a team that, needs kind of a kick in the ass and also is going to have a lot of younger players in place, if Sturm is going to make that one of the top, principles or founding identities of what he wants his team to be, is really intense in practices, starting on time, really accountable, I think at least that's a step in the right direction of something that we looked at last year that clearly went wrong, and it's an immediate fix or something they're going to focus on going into next year. I think that was encouraging, of looking at, something concrete that you can see that they're trying to change from last year, when I think right as we got to middle September, I think all of us were seeing that team like, is everything okay? Because something kind of felt fishy back then, and we kind of see how it kind of snowballed from there.
And it only got fishier throughout the season. There was another thing Sturm said that I thought was interesting, just sort of when he was asked about the roster. And he's like, well, I like the current roster, but it's kind of obvious we need to add some more like guys up front, which like, duh. But for him to actually admit that and openly say that, I was like, all right, well, clearly they're going to do that. It just comes down to sort of where they're going to do that and how they're going to do that, which I want to get to in a bit. But first, our friends over at Prizepicks. Connor, do you know ball? There's only one series left in the playoffs, and the championship is officially on the line. That means time is running out for you to put your final takes to the test on Prizepicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. This year's basketball playoffs are headed towards crowning a first-time champ in more than 50 years. Don't miss your last chance to cash in on history with Prizepicks. Pick more or less on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and more for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Today, I've talked a lot about it, but over in hockey, there's points, there's goals, there's saves, there's time on ice. These guys never leave the ice. There's face-offs, how many they win. A lot of good, interesting things that aren't, that don't just hinge on points, which I really, really like, and I've been doing well with throughout the Stanley Cup and throughout the playoffs. Prizepicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. So, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS. Get yourself $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks. Run your game. Just sprint your game, not just run. Sprint. Yes. Don't jog. Sprint. There was an Athletic mock draft that came out that like the entire staff of the Athletic worked on earlier this week. And Connor, I felt this way last year with the Patriots before they drafted Drake May, where like every single NFL mock draft, I was like, I have to read, even though every single one's pretty much the same.
Right.
But the fun of this draft, and we're going to do a mock draft, I believe next week. The fun of this draft is it's uncertain the way it's going to go. Like number 1 seems pretty clear. Number 2, kind of clear. After that, wide open. Yeah. Anything could happen. So this makes it fun. And the Athletic put one out this week, and I was looking at the description, and it said we included a Bruins trade. And I'm like, ooh, trading the 7th pick. Must be trading the 7th pick. No. Fluto projected guessed. It wasn't really a report, but just sort of, for the mock draft's sake, had the Bruins trading Pavel Zacha and Marat Hustendinov to the Canucks for Niles Hoglander and the 15th overall pick in this year's draft. So in that case, the Bruins would have 7 and 15. Last time the Bruins had 2 first-round picks, they had 3, and it didn't go so well. Sorry to bring that up. But I will say this, Connor. I love that idea. Yeah. I actually did like that. And I think Pavel Zacha gives you so much value for what he brings, and he's, buddies with Pastrnak and he works with Pastrnak, and I think you have to kind of evaluate that. But you get a chance to get a 24-year-old winger who scored, 24 goals 2 years ago?
2 years ago,
and you get a high-end prospect out of it, whether it's a defenseman or whomever. Like, I have a tough time saying no to that. What about you?
Yeah, it's really tempting, right? And it feels like I read something today mentioning that like the Pittsburgh Penguins are like the only team in the NHL that's like, yeah, we're blowing things up. Everyone else is kind of, you're seeing not a lot of teams just kind of wave the white flag and admit that they're going to be looking at a couple of lean years. I don't think Bruins fans necessarily want to hear that, right? I think you want to hear, oh, they're going to trade for Elias Pettersson. They're going to trade for Robertson. They're going to trade for Natchez. And like, we get one of those guys, everything's really popping off.
We're set. Yeah.
But again, like you can easily look at it. If they make a splashy move like that, they sign like another middle six forward, Lindholm, McAvoy back, Swayman, regains his form. You could easily make the case the team's back in the playoff picture, and they're going to continue to improve by, again, still benefiting from the haul of draft picks they have in 26 and 27. Like, you can easily map that out. But if so many other teams are going to be buyers this offseason, and you got the cap jumping up, and as much as the Bruins have a lot of cap space, so do a lot of other teams that, it's funny. We've mentioned, Mitch Marner so many times. All the rumors out there have not mentioned the Bruins once. It's like teams that are more poised to contend right now or have more cap space, whether it's
that ain't going to stop us from bringing it up.
Yeah, like the Anaheim Ducks or the Carolina Hurricanes or, the Utah Mammoth or any one of these teams. Like
Vegas
Bruins,
isn't brought up.
Vegas. I saw something that Petraglia might be going in LTIR because of course he is. So
that would be hysterical.
So again, as much as
Cassidy pulling all the strings,
yes,
out there
exactly. So as much as you look at those kinds of players, and it's like, all right, you miss out on Mana. Well, you got Brock Besser, Nikolai Ehlers, and again, for one of those guys, if you're Nikolai Ehlers, would you rather go to Carolina or Boston? I know not a lot of people like Carolina, but if you're trying to win now, you have to weigh that as well. So it's not like a lock that the Bruins, even with this cap space, are destined to come out of this with one of those, big free agents, of which maybe a few of them aren't even going to be worth the $8.5 million that you're looking for. Yes, you'd be interested in trying to get a Jason Robertson or Elias Pettersson maybe, or JJ Peterka or one of these players. But are you also outbidding other teams that have younger 24 to 27-year-old forwards that they can move as well and future draft capital? Like, there's no guarantee that as much as the Bruins want to be aggressive, they're going to land one of these players. So if all of a sudden that means that instead of trying to catch that big fish, you end up, selling off more pieces and really acquire another, first round pick or other things like that. And maybe it means this is going to be another lean year, but you're giving more of an opportunity to replenish your prospect pipeline and moving Zacha, who, again, I'd much rather move a guy like Casey Middlestat, but you're not getting that much value for him, especially with that contract. No. Like, Zacha brings a lot of value. He's a versatile player on a really, really good contract that is going to look even better once the cap really explodes the next couple of years. But if by moving him, and he's not part of what the 2-3 year plan is going to be, gets you Jackson Smith, like a guy who could be a top 4 stalwart, or if it means you keep number 7 and you get a center, and then all of a sudden at 15 you've got, Carter Bear or one of these other players that could be a middle 6 winger for the next couple of years. Even I saw like Victor Eklund, who people love.
Yeah.
Like, he's kind of falling now into like the 12 to 15 range. If all of a sudden like you come out of this with, let's say even like Jake O'Brien or Brady Martin, one of those players, and Eklund or a Bear, you're in a pretty good spot. And that's not even counting the second round picks you got, where all of a sudden maybe you're getting one of your right shot D, and there's no guarantee, but all of a sudden you look at that haul of players and you're like, all right, I like where this team could be in another 2-3 years. And that's kind of like the safer option, right? If you are just trying to move more assets, because I think teams will be willing to buy. It's just, it also is an acceptance that maybe you're not going to be, hunting for those big fish this offseason, even if it means you're going to be really good in 27, 28, let's say.
Yeah, I have a couple things on that mock trade by Fluto. I mean, the first thing is obviously, if they're going to trade for the 15th pick, I would assume they really like one or two prospects in the middle there. I guess my only hesitation would be this draft is not the greatest first round. So like, are you getting someone that you're confident is going to be a franchise guy somewhere in that, 10 to 20 range? The other idea, though, is if they did make that trade for the 15th pick, what if they packaged it with number 7 and traded up for number 3? Think about it with Chicago, right? So like we've talked a little bit about trading up in this draft. What's the difference between like Frindell and Desnoyers, or, Jake O'Brien and Roger McQueen and Brady Martin down there kind of later in the top 10? I don't think it's that great, but the Bruins might think it is. The Bruins might look at Anton Frindell or Desnoyers or James Haggs and say, that's a franchise center. We want that guy so bad. We will give up 7 and 15 for 3. That'd be interesting. That would be an interesting way to look at it. Now, you're also like, if you're doing the Fluto mock trade, you're also giving up like Zacha and Hustendinov and the 7th pick basically for that 3rd pick. But like, if you're Chicago, right, you have your franchise center in Bedard. You're likely not going to get a top D because Schaefer's going to be off the board. You're likely not getting Misa because he's off the board.
Yeah.
So you have a chance to get 2 top 15 players. Like, I don't know. Again, we're not even just guessing the mock trade. We're going past that. But what if the Bruins took that 15th pick that they picked up in that mock trade and put it with 7 to get to 3? Like, I'd be interested if they try to trade up too, because as we said, like when we were talking before the lottery happened, if you can get one of Frindell, Desnoyers, or Haggs, you're set.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, I like O'Brien. I like some of the other guys too, but I do wonder if they're just bullish on one of those guys. They say, all right, let's go back to move up even more.
Yeah, no, it is really appealing. And again, if you're able to get, I think especially if you can focus in on a center with that number 7 pick, and listen, it could be Martin, it could be O'Brien. Those feel like the most likely guys that have been there, even though it feels like now like Brady Martin might go like number 4 overall to Utah.
I know.
So,
crazy?
But again, that also goes back to, we thought after the draft lottery was sorted out, we're like, well, say goodbye to Frindell and Desnoyers, all these guys we talked about for 2 months. And all of a sudden, I think in that mock draft from the Athletic, wasn't Haggs 6?
No, I think he was 5 to now.
Oh, okay. But it feels like there are a lot of situations where all of a sudden one of these guys could fall, whether it's a Frindell or a Desnoyers or even a Haggs, where if you sit at 7, there could be a really intriguing centerman right there. And if you are moving on from Zacha, who again brings a lot of value but maybe isn't helping you out in 27, 28 to where you want to be, wouldn't you rather have, if you are doing the longer rebuild, I guess if you want to call it that, wouldn't you rather have like a guy like Eklund or Bayer or one of these players that could be a 20-goal, 50-point middle 6 player to help you out? Right? I think that, and also not even counting the fact that, as you said, like with Höglander, like that's a guy that could be your next Geeky or Zacha, where he had a really bad year last year with Vancouver, like a lot of guys. Maybe he was just one of those players that had a crazy shooting percentage 2 years ago when Vancouver was filthy, and it felt like that wasn't going to be sustainable. But maybe he can be a 45-point middle 6 player as well, and you bank on that and him in a change of scenery that helps him out, and that also kind of lessens the burden of moving on from a really useful piece like Zacha. So there's a lot of really appealing or intriguing ways you can look at how the Bruins can approach this offseason, but the safer option of like moving more assets and getting more draft picks, it's probably the easiest one to look at and be like, yeah, there's gonna be guys interested in a Zacha, and they probably will be willing to pay a premium to get these players that are NHL ready, are still in their 20s, and also especially have really good contracts at a time when the cap is jumping up. Like, there is value to be had there if you are the Bruins and you are trying to maybe look more at 27, 28 as opposed to getting right back at it in 25, 26.
Like the Bruins have a couple guys who you're like, wait, they're only that age. Like Zacha is a 97, so I think he's 28, and Kiki's 26.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kiki's a 99, like me, which is just like mind blowing when you think about it. The other thing that's interesting too is like, let's say you add that 15th pick or you add another first round pick in this draft. Maybe that makes one of your future firsts more expendable.
Right.
And future firsts have more value than first this year, because it's like, oh, what if the Bruins stink? What if the Leafs stink? Like all those different things, you have more ammo to play with. So there's that too. If you trade into this or get another first round pick this time, maybe you sacrifice future first for a current player as well. So lots of different hypotheticals we can do, and lots of different hypotheticals we're going to do over the next couple of weeks in the lead up to the draft, which is not that far away. Something that does seem to be dead and gone, unfortunately. The Will Cuylle offer sheet rumors. Seems like with the Chris Kreider trade, it was a great run for the Will Cuylle offer sheet idea. It was a heck of an idea. It was galaxy brain level stuff. Doesn't seem like it's going to happen given the cap relief that the Rangers received from trading Kreider to the Ducks.
It is insane how many teams go ass backwards, falling over themselves to bail out the Rangers' shitty cap management. It is wild. Between Trouba, between Barclay Goodrow's deal, between Kreider, who had an extreme drop off this past year, and again, like they moved Trouba and Goodrow, bought out that contract, got a lot of flack for it. Should have been doing backflips so they got someone to take Trouba's contract, and then immediately put themselves back in cap jail with the JT Miller deal. It's like,
that's right.
All right, so right. What exactly are you doing here? So they get bailed out once again, and I think the fact that now the Rangers have the cap space to sign probably Cuylle and Keandre Miller, I think it harkens back to what we said in the last segment about there's a lot of appealing things the Bruins could do to be aggressive, acquire younger talent that helps you out right now and for the future. That's all well and good. It's really fun to talk about guys like Cuylle or offer sheets or trading for Marty Necas or one of these guys, but there's no guarantee it's going to happen. And there's a lot of teams that are probably thinking the same exact thing. No one wants to go out into the offseason being like, I want to acquire the 2 31-year-old guys. Like, no, everyone wants to find the mid-20s players that, have a higher ceiling, have more to give, but can help you out right now. And there's other teams that are more equipped to do that than the Bruins when you look at just more NHL assets. It's like Zacha is a guy we've mentioned because he's one of the few guys that fits that bill of has a good deal, can help you out now, and is going to be a good player for the next couple of years. So it makes sense as to why he's a guy that keeps on getting brought up. But it's not like the Bruins are packed to the gills with tradable assets that are going to get you a good return. The Bruins are so talent deficient that he's like the only guy really, unless you really want to blow things up and move like David Pastrnak or someone, Jeremy Swayman, but that's not happening. So
go against that.
Yeah, I do think it just the Cuylle rumors probably now dying down just again show that it's fun to talk about, and it's the Bruins should be trying to leave no stone unturned when it comes to finding deals like that of players that can help them out for the long haul, but it's going to be easier said than done, especially with so many teams either having more assets to move on from or having as much, if not more, cap space in the Bruins this offseason.
Yeah, it's tough because Cuylle would have fit perfectly here. And people, the more like you brought that idea up, I think people really came around to it of like, oh, here's a big, young, like left winger who has high scoring potential, who hasn't really scratched it yet. And the Rangers are kind of dumb. But the Rangers did open up that cap space, and now it's tough with offer sheets too, because it's like they don't happen often, and just because it happened twice last season doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be everywhere. It's just now teams have a little bit more cap space, and teams might sort of futz with other teams in terms of offer sheets for that. Stanley Cup wise, we're doing this before Game 4, so I'm not going to get into like a breakdown of Game 4. I will say though, Prizepicks wise, time on ice continues to just work really well. Guys like Barkov, McDavid, in net. Obviously, we don't know who's starting yet. I think for Game 4 at this time, but saves, especially for Bobrovsky, have been like I've nailed that all 3 games. So though I'd like those two, Draisaitl and McDavid points wise or goals, I think are always a good one to do. I just time on ice and shots on and saves are a little more easy to kind of glean what's going to happen from as compared to goals. But I will say, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make any predictions for Game 4 though. I'm not going to be like, oh, the Oilers are going to win or oh, the Panthers are going to win, because I think this is going to probably come out post Game 4. Well, anyways, Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, we're going to have it covered every step of the way over at the Globe and Boston.com. We have it covered throughout this offseason, whether it's, I'm going to say the head coaching search. No, it's finally done. But looking at the draft, free agency, trades, the Bruins search for an assistant coach, which is something also worth keeping tabs on. Someone that hopefully will help their power play is going to be something worth following along. We'll have you covered throughout this summer going into training camp in September. So you can read all my stuff over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofski. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.